Alrighty folks, welcome back to the channel. What up? Look at my flames over here. Also over here, top comment from last video. It ain't even that good. You could do better. Tell me you can do better. You? First the guy she tells you not to worry about. You better be worrying. Especially me, because I'm like a GT35 compared to that one. Let alone Uncle Barry over here. Got her. Anyways, make sure you subscribe to DD Speed Shop and Zip Ties and Buy Supplies, and let's get into this video. Today, we're gonna start by drilling out our other holes in the front motor plate, and then drilling out our holes in the mid plate, get it all solid mounted, and then we can start from there. We need to add our water pump on, so this engine has to be lifted up a bit so we can get the water pump adapters in and the gaskets behind these plates. That would look cool, wouldn't it? This would actually look cool, wouldn't it? To have another one of these over here. And then just out the hood, because it would be way taller than the hood, I think. Look at this beautiful day in Canadian land right now. It's almost winter. I'm surprised this isn't snowing right now. Oh, harder. Oh, baby, I'm almost there. Oh, so good. And shit. Look at it. Other side too, the bolts aren't perfectly straight up and down because I suck at drilling. It like slipped and then it started drilling a hole, and then once it does that, you're kind of wrecked. So they're a little off-centered, but it's gonna be sturdy. The front plate has to come off now because we have to put gaskets behind this piece, and then gaskets here, and then our adapters. I forgot, I still have to clearance the alternator here because this, it fits perfect in here, only if we don't put any tension on the belt. So, I'll just make a little mark here somewhere, make a cut so it can swing up some. But this bolt is out of the plate, and it's still being held up by all of this side, and then the mid plate and the trans mount. So that's pretty cool. Not gonna work. The aluminum's gunking up the carbide bit. I need to get it like an aluminum ripping one where the teeth are just spaced out so much further, and then it doesn't want to chew the metal up like that. So instead, we'll just remove this plate. Why am I using this? I got a pew pew gun right here. So it's gonna go water pump adapter, gasket, plate, gasket, and then bolt into the engine. Hopefully these bolts aren't too long. They might be though. I actually have shorter ones. I ended up just using the grinder and the flappy wheel. It didn't come out as perfect as I would hoped, but it does fit and it can swing its full range of motion up. So now we just have to get a belt that matches this length right here, just around that, and that's our only accessory we're running this time. I'm just gonna place this radiator in here, and I'm gonna see how far in the bumper we can stick the turbo right here, in this area. So I gotta put the bumper on just to make sure that we have room up here, and then if not, we'll come up with a different game plan. So to get it down low enough where I want to in the bumper here, I'm definitely gonna have to cut my stand. So I'm gonna cut a portion out of that, re-weld it up, cut a piece of the rod as well. See if that works. So right now, you can kind of see the bottom of it. I would have to put a hole like right here in the bumper, which would be pretty awesome. But you can see that it's almost exactly where the other mounts are. So depending on how big our turbo is, it might be mindful just to use those mounts, and it'll still kind of be in the same low position that it's in the front bumper. And then we'll come off this header over here and just snake down into that one, and then off that header straight down into it, and then the exhaust goes right out through the side over there. And then the intercooler piping probably going to have to come across the bottom in the front here, do a 180, maybe up through here, right this way, up over the header, and then into there. It's the only good way I could see it doing it. Or through here, come up through the fender here, put a hole in the bodywork right there, come in and 90 into the intercooler here. I'm actually gonna throw our wiring harness in the car now to figure out where we have to cut it to put those bulkhead connectors on, because as you remember, the inside of the car is actually wired up to these bulkhead connectors that are behind the intake here. So we just have to go from the bulkhead connectors to the engine side of things. Also, I bought remote mount coil brackets, so they're gonna go underneath the headers down where the motor mounts usually would be. Actually, I could probably mount them where the motor mounts were. That'd probably be the most ideal thing. In fact, I still have the plates here that bolt up to the engine, so I could bolt the coil relocations to this plate and then bolt this onto the motor, and that would work out perfect. It is kind of heavy, but whatever. Well, we'll put this on now and get that sorted. This time, baby, I'll be bulletproof. Oh boy, everything is confusing in here. I've also got this little file folder that I bought today. I printed off the plugs for the ECU side and the plugs for the firewall side. This is the pinouts, and then this is just a general wiring harness of the Holley harness for the LS. And I'm gonna keep this in the car, so when we're at the track and we need to figure out plugins or whatever, it'll all be right here. And anything that pertains to the car, I'm gonna print it off and I'm gonna put it in this folder to have in the car, so we have a track side. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go steal the battery out of the Fox, put it in the back of this thing and see where we have power. How about that? How about that? Wait, you've never used vice grips to put battery terminals on before? Weird. These are like bolt-in style terminals with round things with no bolts. So that's the best we got. Let's just see what happens if we turn the key on now. Nothing. See if we pull this out then. Is it out or in? I think you have to push in to turn it off, maybe? I don't know. We have blinkers. Why nothing else turn on though? Oh, here we go. Oh, there goes our ECU. We should be able to get the tune off this thing now. No icebox on though. That's our blinkers. Look, this left signal, right signal, high beams. That's cool. I like that. I think this is our shift light as well. Oh, it'll still start with the key too? Or no? Oh no. It'll just reset all this stuff. So it's all on the panel up here then, which is zip tied on, I think. No, it's welded on. So that's pretty neat. We have ECU power apparently, which means I can get rid of that red and green wire that's underneath there. What does this do? That's probably for this power. I don't know what that is for. I'll ask Carrie. Reverse lights? I don't have a shifter set up in here. Actually, let's see if we have ECU power. We'll put this on. So, if we have ECU power, this should work. Oh, I'm like waiting for that. Are reverse lights coming on too? I think they are. Brake lights are coming on. I was waiting for the click of the trans, but the trans, it's not hooked up on the trans. And then what happens if we press the bump box as well? Try and balance on my arm. That's so cool. I think the wiring on the intercooler wasn't hooked up, so if I turn the key here now, it should be... Oh yeah, it's working. So good news for us means we do not have to use these wires right here. These three. So we can go anywhere from here in the harness. So I'm gonna lay it out the best I can and then find a good point to cut this entire harness. So it's looking like it's gonna be right there at the end of that tape is where we're gonna cut it. It loops around. Our throttle body's not up here anymore. It's up here, so we're gonna have to pull back the wiring on this and redo a little bit of it because only the coolant temp sensor is up here. There's actually an intake air temperature sensor in the air to water inside, so that's already wired in. So that one can come off. And then fuel pressure, that one's gonna run under the intake manifold. So I'll run under the intake manifold here, we'll go to fuel pressure and we'll go to the coolant temp sensor under the intake. And then everything else can be tucked away. Fuel harnesses here, injector harnesses actually go down underneath the back. So it's gonna be pretty tidy wiring, I think, on this thing. Measure once, cut once. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah, whatever, man. Okay, find something to cut it with and I'll show you. I'm just gonna take this knife to it. I'm the kind of person that has to dive into something head first. If I think about it too much and I come up with too much of a game plan, it just wastes time for me because then I'm back where I started. It might work I don't know. It's just how I have to do things. I have to dive into them head first, fail, and then learn why I failed. That's just my learning process is how I have to do it. I was using that tape to measure my wiener. Actually, I was using it to measure the belt for the alternator, but we'll say it was my wiener. Right there, at the end of the tape. Here it goes. I'm just cutting it. No turning back now. Alright, so I'm just out here tinkering after work a little bit here. What I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to untape it all. Pull all the sensors out as much as I can. There are some splices here. I might even take those apart. And run our wires where we want to run them. So like completely pull apart connectors that need to be pulled apart. Run them where we want to run them and cut them all again to length. You know what? If I'm really going to learn how to do this, I'm really going to learn how to do this. I cut out all my splices. I got rid of the intake air temp sensor because there's already one on the inside of the car. And then I cut all of my wires where the splices were. So they're all just loose pigtails now. I'm going to run them exactly where I want to run them with some loom on them. Get them so they all join up here. We'll put all our splices up here and then we'll go into the bulkhead connectors and it'll work out super perfect. And that's just how I'm gonna do it. Like, we don't need this much wire for our intake air or our idle air control. We only need like probably this much wire. So I'm gonna get everything all laid out here. We need to put a sensor in this so we can plug that one in. We need to figure out where we're putting our map sensor. We're gonna figure out which map sensor we're using and go from there, I guess. So I met up with Daddy Cal and I got a quick lesson on our connectors here, how we use the pins and which pins we use. And then he lent me this tool, which is like super high-tech craziness. So now I just have to sort through my harness. I have to add wires for our MAC valves. That's a big one to add. And then as you can see, I'm just kind of tying up wires where they kind of need to go, plugging the ones that I can in. And then I'm going to tie them underneath the intake and shorten everything that I need to shorten, basically. That's a lot of planning and forethought, but in reality, it's probably only 30, 35 wires that I have to connect, which shouldn't be too bad, I guess. Plus I had the pinouts, which makes it super easy. So I know it looks like a horrible rat's nest back here, but I have everything kind of the length that I want it. And this all has to be cut off in one length right here to go to both connectors there. So this is all excess wire right here. I did add in a couple things, like these wires go to my 2 Mac valves and my dome sensor that I'm going to wire in. I didn't have any 22 gauge, so I'm using 18 gauge for my dome sensor. Fuel is going to end up here. Map is probably going to end up right there. There's an intake air temp already wired up inside. Coolant temperature is here. Yeah, so essentially everything that I need is going to be on there now. I don't think I left anything else out. So now I can pull the intake off. I can get our harness. I can use just one zip tie here, cut the bulk of the wires all evenly, and then get to pinning. All our orange wires have to be crimped together because they're all 5-volt signals. And then all our ground wires, except for the 2 big ones for our Mac valves, are going to get joined together because those are all sensor signals. I know this isn't professional by any means, but this is what I'm doing. I've already got 2 pins in this one. These are all the splices that need to be spliced. I just need to get better pliers for it. The 5-volt references the grounds. But we'll go to 4 here, and it's injector cylinder 3, pin B25. B25 is a beige 20 gauge wire. I'm going to assume it's this one. That goes to our injectors. So we did gray, white, beige is next. We'll cut a little bit off the end. We'll get our pin. Put that on there. Use the cool pliers. Voila, pull test, doesn't pull out. And it goes in number 4. Where are you, number 4? Right there. It's all the way seated. Just got to do that for, I don't know, 30 more wires. It's going to look a little congested until I have them all pinned, and then it still might not be perfect. But what can you do? I'm just your average guy, your average person. I know the minimal amount for wiring. So I'm gonna try and do this myself and gain a new skill, and this will just further my knowledge in the automotive world. It'll be all right. That is our first plug done. I know it is not perfect. It doesn't look perfect by any means. And now that's one harness complete. We gotta do the other one, which is kind of a pain in the ass because the coil and cam wires are on this one. These are all the splices that we need to do. This is 5-volt reference. Actually, there's a ground mixed in there by accident. Ground, and then these are coil powers. And now there's another splice we have to do in here that I was unaware of, and that is crank cam power are on the same pin as well. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of trouble with the cam and crank sensors, but I think my main discrepancy is it's a Ford pinout and I'm going to an LS, so I have to use the pins that I need to use and not all the ones that are there. One of the big one being this ground to engine IPU. I looked for it on the car, and I hooked the wiring harness, that pin, to every pin on the ECU, and it's not to any of those, and it's not to engine ground. B1 on this one, crank and cam sensor power, is actually one wire where it comes through on mine too, so I gotta put another splice for my cam and crank here, but the splice I noticed is already on the engine side, so they must have just like, it must be because the Ford only has one wire going to it, where the LS has two, because the Ford is one connector versus two, I believe. So there's just like little things like that that are holding me up. This is one of those videos where I spent 5 hours just tinkering on something and I can't film any of it. So I hope you guys still appreciate it, but I'm gonna keep going at it. Once we get it all pinned up, I'm gonna put the harness on the car, have the plugs ran through the inside so I can just plug them in, and then I can sit on the inside of the car and I can go each individual one to the one that it's supposed to correspond within the ECU and see if we have all our powers everywhere that we need. All right, here's my 2 plugs right here. I just have 5 splices left to do. These two, that one, that one, that one. That's like signal grounds, 5-volt references, power to something else, ground to something else. Those will have to be spliced because they're spliced on this side of the harness. They only have 1 pin coming through the other side, unfortunately, because the factory harness is all pinned like close to the ECU. I have to be doing what I have to be doing before I get the turbo. So all this knick-knacky, picky stuff that I need to do before the turbo shows up, I have to do it now. Or else, once I get a turbo kit, it's going to be full attack on the turbo kit. And then after that, I'm not going to have any time because the season's going to be over. So I'm trying to attack everything as best as I can. Trying to learn new stuff at a minimum. And that's just how it's going for me. So, like I said, once we get the turbo kit, it's going to be full attack on the turbo kit. Let me know what you guys think about it all. Subscribe to the channel. Peace easy. Get that V.